Ladies and gentlemen, the Madison County Board of Education work session for Thursday, February 1st, 2018 is now called to order. Mr. Weiss, would you please lead us in a moment of prayer?
Lord Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us to meet and gather in this forum this evening to do the good work for the County of Madison and its schools, the children, the communities. We ask that you guide us and give us direction as we make decisions that will affect the education of our children. In your name, amen.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. We just recently got back from a tour of the Career Tech Center. February is National Career Tech Education Month, so after we get started here, the board actually has a resolution to kind of recognize that. So we'll let Ms. Bates kind of lead that in, but it was appreciate the staff for leading us around and having some hospitality for us, and I think everybody kind of had a good time seeing what you guys are doing, the good work there, so thanks for that. In front here, you'll see this is some of the artwork from the photography class that they asked me to come out and pick, and that's one of the hardest things to do. But Mr. Mittman allows we work with him to get some of these framed, and they let us have them, and so these will be some of the new additions going up here in the central office. But we also had a winner from Hazel Green 2 that is advanced on to a state level, so that will be coming. We'll have some more art coming your way later in February, so when we get a chance to recognize that student coming up. So wanted to be out here for your viewing pleasure. Wanted to talk a little bit about the state report card that was released today statewide. As a system overall, we scored an 85. We had 3 A's, a bunch of B's, and a couple C's. But this is just one measure that we use as kind of a tool of ways to look to get better. The State Department of Education emphasized that this was a prototype. This was something that's definitely just a start. It's not all-encompassing. For our schools that didn't have a grade 12, all of our middle and elementary schools, 90% of the score was based on the Aspire testing. For all the schools, 10% was on chronic absences, but like some of the things we didn't know that 15 was going to be the chronic absent number that was going to count. We thought it would be 18, things like that. So it's kind of almost like you got your grade and they figured out the score a year after the school year was over. But we did have a press release that went out about an hour ago, and I copied the board members on that. So you'll find that if you want to see the official statement from our school system on that. Would you guys like to comment any more on that? Maybe at the close of the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, we're getting ready to do our pre-K registrations coming up. We're in the last year, coming into last year, all of our elementary schools applied for the Office of School Readiness pre-K grants. All but 2 of our elementary schools got those grants. And in a lot of the cases, we had waiting list for those. So we're trying to figure out a way to serve all schools and serve more students. So a few days ago, a week or so ago, the OSR grant, the Office of School Readiness Pre-Ks, that enrollment process is starting now. In fact, I think it started January 29th and closes tomorrow, maybe, is the last day, or did it already close, Carrie?
No, it'll continue.
It'll continue. Okay. And then the schools so that's on our Facebook page and on our website on the registration information there, but there will be some other pre-K classes coming that we will kind of run our own version of that we'll call kind of a 4K readiness program that we hope that we can get more involvement from parents so they won't have to be stuck on a waiting list. So we're developing that and building that. Ms. Bass is heading up that effort, but also with the entire instruction department there too is kind of working around and with principals on how best to do that. So because of the Office of School Readiness, we had to get that information out now for those schools that have those OSR grants, but there'll be more information coming out later once we really get a strong hold of how we're going to develop and get the guidelines out for the other potential 4K readiness programs. Ms. Bass, did I say that pretty Closely, did I leave out anything?
That's
You wanna
correct. So some schools who may have had OSR units previously that were not Title I funded schools, were having difficulty sustaining that funding because, there was a shortfall for those budgets. I think we've discussed that before. This will allow those schools to have an opportunity to offer something in their community that's quality and good, but not having to assume that financial shortfall. So, we won't have less pre-Ks than we have now. We'll have at minimum the exact same number, but our hope is to have pre-K at every elementary school, when we open next fall. It should be a win for everybody.
Did you say that's our hope, or that's it?
I mean, our plan is, right?
That's our plan.
That they will.
All right, well, good deal. I didn't want to come on out and say it, but since you did, that is our plan, is to have pre-K at every school. So that's part of it.
And the funding, if they're not OSR, what will?
So it's gonna be tuition-based program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's not a way to offer, free preschool,
Same as
at every school, unfortunately. We wish that that was an option, but with, the way the Office of School Readiness funds the grant, it's approximately $80,000 a year. To operate the unit is about $104,000 a year. So that's a pretty good chasm to have to jump when you don't know whether you'll be able to cover that shortfall or not. And so, tough decision, obviously, but offering, for a lot of our communities, there's just not a lot of even preschool options in those communities. So offering even a tuition-based program will be something that they maybe never had before. So I think it'll be a win for everybody.
Well, I know this year there've been, like some of the units that are OSR grants where they fell below their minimum, but people couldn't, they offered it to people in other zones to come that were on a waiting list, but because of transportation, it wasn't feasible for them, so.
And we had tuition right now, with our
Right, I
OSR
know,
grant,
yeah.
so since we're thinking we're already doing tuition, well, maybe we can, if we're going to charge tuition, maybe we can do tuition and be able to take care of some of these needs that are on the waiting list. So
We'll
we're,
be able to have class sizes, ratios that are a little bit different, and some of those things that we'll have a little bit more freedom to do at those schools will also benefit those communities. Now, our Title I schools will still be served through Office of School Readiness combined with Title I. But we're going to use the same curriculum and instruction standards and all of those things throughout the district. It'll just be two different program models because of the grant funding.
Do you run into any kind of cost, like playground equipment, or I don't know the rules, but is there any sort of stuff like that?
so for the Office of School Readiness grants, there has to be kind of a local match, and there's very specific items on how large the room is going to be, the type of equipment, the setup of the room. In the 4K or Readiness classrooms that aren't affiliated with OSR, obviously it's not OSR, so those regulations, don't come into play as far as, the measurements of those things. So, from being playground equipment or whatever. And so, some of those things may have been reasons or not why some schools got the grants or not, or why some, because some schools will get one grant, some will get two. So we're going to have the same number of Office of School Readiness grants next year as this year. We're keeping rolling them over. As we heard, we got to reapply, but we feel confident in that. But with the basically the new readiness unit that we're trying to develop, they won't be under those regulations and oversight from the Office of School Readiness.
And it's not something as a system we think will incur a lot of expense.
I don't think we'll be breaking out the measuring tape and kind of going, I mean, they will be in our classrooms that we have, and so, obviously it will be, and a lot of them will be kind of the spaces that were, an OSR classroom was in there. They're just going to convert to this one, so it's really going to be run and overseen by the school. I would say we don't necessarily have the staff to go and manage, because this could potentially be up to 6 to 12 more pre-K classrooms that we have now, and our federal programs department with two has a very, very, very difficult time managing the OSR programs we have now because they're using federal funds with that. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, but so this would, the other programs will not have oversight from that. It will basically be run by the principal at the school. All right. Okay, as part of the work session, there was item C, and I didn't know if you want to.
No, item
Discuss
C,
it.
I think we received some new information today, and we'd like to have the opportunity to evaluate that and see if it would be beneficial to add to the current tool that we're considering. So I think we can table that until we have time to review that. And then, now we'll
Do a
move into
special
special
session now.
session. All right. At this point, we'll move into special session for Madison County's Board of Education for Thursday, February 1st, 2018.
Okay, so I recommend approval of the agenda for February 1, 2018.
Motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion or question? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. And now we have a resolution concerning the Career Technical Education Month, and I'll, instead of reading all the whereases, I'll kind of summarize, but one of the most important ones to me is the daughter of an electrician and sister of a welder. Career Technical Education programs prepare students for fulfilling careers by offering integrated programs of study that link secondary and post-secondary education and lead to the attainment of industry-recognized credentials. And the resolution that we resolved to do with this is for all Madison County school citizens to become more familiar with the services and benefits offered by the career and technical education programs in their community, and to support and participate in these programs as well as enhance their individual skills and productivity. So we do thank you for all you do for making sure that our students have a skill set when they leave here, regardless of whether they're going to post-secondary or secondary education or going to go directly into the workforce. So, Mr. Romine, would you like to say anything about your staff or the current programs we have to offer? As I put you on the spot? You're welcome.
All the career technical education programs in Madison County schools and all possible high schools and the Career Tech Center strive every day to help prepare students for whatever their path takes them, but ultimately that path does end in the workforce. And we want them to have good understanding of what they want to be and what they and how we can help them get there. So, that's the staff, the Career Tech staff in Madison County schools is phenomenal.
All right.
We need to pass it, correct?
Y'all, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, so is there a motion, I know y'all haven't had a chance to read this resolution, but is there a motion to pass?
Second.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we'll sign those sections this evening.
Okay. All right, I recommend approval of the Ephod 2018 Budget Amendment Number 1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or question?
I can get my computer to work.
I was going to ask about the 21 million outlay of capital. Kind of go over
I don't know.
that. Under the capital, it's like 21 million too for capital outlay. But,
Under capital projects then?
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's an estimate of the current, from our capital plan as to what we could possibly, there's no way to know, but that's strictly capital funds, whether it's BRAC money or whether it is the balance we have from the refunding bond issue, the $3 million to continue to work at Owens Crossroads, and it's strictly an estimate in the budget. We have no one knows what the year holds. So typically, and that was in the original budget, that hasn't changed. That
So
was
it's not,
changed.
so nobody has a list of projects that represents or anything like that?
Oh, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. A portion of that's just BRAC funds, and then, of course, the Owens Crossroads project is in there. but it
Those
is the
three
same
million.
amount we approved in
September.
September.
Is there any other question or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, I recommend approval of the HP Hewlett-Packard Print Management Services.
Motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any question or discussion?
I had one question. What's the difference in a responsible bidder and a, I don't know who I'm asking this to.
Mr. Wilson?
Oh, okay, a responsible bidder or a, I guess a non-responsible bidder?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
So, like, you said there were 7 responsive bids, and then there were 3 responsible bidders or something like that?
No, not on this HP. That would be on the voice over IP.
Which one are we doing?
HP.
HP.
Oh,
HP.
okay, sorry, in the scrolling agenda is the other, okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Is there any question or discussion about the HP print management? It is backwards in the scrolling agenda.
Yeah.
You're correct.
Yeah,
It was
it is.
It
loaded
is.
backwards. All those in favor of approving the HP print management services, please say aye.
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 All right. That's exciting.
Yes, it actually is exciting, as
Mhm.
sad as it sounds that excites us. We're so happy to have printers.
Okay. I recommend approval of the following bid for the voice over IP management services.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second regarding the voice over IP management services, and we have a question.
Yeah, that's my, did you
What that
understand?
entails is, when we put a bid package out there, and Jan knows a lot more about this than I do, but they have to send us a bond check, they have to have certain certifications, they have to have references, and 3 of the 7 or 8 that we responses got, they checked all the boxes for that. The others did not have everything they needed to be able to be awarded the bid.
So they're
The
responsible.
bid would have requirements in it.
The criterion, okay. Makes sense.
We don't know which 3, I guess.
Yeah, we know.
I mean, we don't know. Oh, we do
We
know
do.
somehow on this thing? Okay.
And the very first one says, should they be eligible for the thing, and it says yes or no at the very top on
That's
Okay.
the
based
Excel
on-
spreadsheet.
Okay, I got you, okay.
Yep.
Are there any other questions or discussion regarding the voice over IP services? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I feel like Dennis and Menace when I say that.
We're just trusting you with that because I could hardly read all the stuff, much less know what you're going to do. Will the phone work?
I think you missed the presentation on how.
She did. She-
Yeah.
Yes.
How great this is going to be. But
Okay.
basically, it's going to be about a tenth of what we could be paying or what we would be paying to get our.
It's
Yeah,
a
they
tremendous
did.
savings for all of that.
Yes.
Okay. On the contracts for services, I am going to pull.
Right.
It would be.
Hang on one second.
Mm-hmm.
20, what's it?
18.
18? Okay, let me pull 18 for later consideration. So for items 1 through 17 and for 19 through 22, I recommend the following contracts for services.
Motion.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or question regarding the contracts for services? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
No,
Ready?
yes, my finger just hurts.
Oh, I'm
So that's
sorry,
fine.
you got it. Is that a paper cut? Or
No.
a slice? Oh, I'm sorry.
But
Okay.
yes.
I recommend approval of the following personnel items and the addendum as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion or question regarding the personnel items? Hearing no questions or discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Mr. Madison, you gonna mention Ms. Austin retiring?
Yeah. Why don't you mention that?
Well, we have an assistant principal from my district, Sandra Austin, who's retiring. And she's been an asset to Meridianville Middle School. Certainly, she will be missed. And that's some huge holes to fill there. So we thank her for her service, and we'll have to go through a selection process and see who we can get.
Her decades of service.
Yes,
So she's,
decades of service.
she's done a lot, and it's put her heart and soul into it. So
Yes,
definitely appreciate
she'll be
that.
missed.
This one confuses me.
Right. We'll move on to item F. Yeah, that's the one you just approved, that retirement there. So here we go. Item F. I recommend approval for the principal position at the Pace Alternative School and with the system athletic administrator responsibilities.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding a recommendation to approve a principal position at Pace with the responsibilities of an athletic administrator?
So are we just adding the athletic director duties and responsibilities to the current?
This will be a new position. So with the virtual school doubling each of the last 3 years and expecting to double next year, and hopefully with the plans of adding a potential K-6 virtual school also to serve elementary grades, we feel like we need somebody dedicated full-time to the virtual academy and working with our schools as they do more blended learning with that too, and doing some quality control on that. So with that, this would be a principal position for the PACE Academy. So we've never had, so the current PACE administrator, we're reassigning to, Ms. Shoemate was doing both. So we're reassigning her just to focus on the virtual academy. So
That makes sense. No, I know.
we want to place a principal there. We've never had a principal at PACE, although we've had folks that said they're the principal at PACE. They've never been a contract principal, like on a contract. So we would like to have a contract principal, or I'm requesting a contract principal in that spot. And since we've never had one in that spot, it's a new position, and Cindy recommended it come for the board to approve a new position there, one that we've never had before. It's a new, we've had principals.
With these extra duties as well.
And with the extra duties in there, it defines those extra duties within that.
Would that be a high school principal? Would it fall under high school
So
classification?
we're going to post it with the high school, on the salary schedule with the high school classification, because we have elementary, middle, ninth grade, and high school. We have 4 strands of principals. Y'all gotten kind of a subcommittee working on that committee of 6 to kind of relook at principal salaries, but this would be under the current. So there's 4 different principal salaries. So this would be as a high school principal on there.
So the current structure, where does it fall right now as it is?
So right now, there's not a current structure. It's just someone there placed an administrative role. The folks that have been there have been under 217-day contracts, just because that's kind of what they were before they began that position. So, but the assistant principals are I see Ken's ready to jump in here, because I probably that sounds right.
You're doing great, sir. Keep going.
So assistant principals are essentially like a teacher, just on an extended contract. So you have support personnel, certified personnel, and then contract principals. So we've never had a contract principal in that position. We would like to have a contract principal in that spot. It would be under, just like the rest of the principal contracts, that would have to be renewed. If it's a brand-new principal, they would get a 2-year probationary contract and come back for renewal. If they've had principal experience, it'd be a 1-year coming back if they're outside the system. If it's a current principal within the district, their contract could transfer into that, and they would continue on with that contract. So it kind of depends on where they are, but if it's a contract principal, it's something that does continuously come before the board. They would not be able to earn tenure in this position.
So as part of a high school principal's job duties, they're required to attend multiple after-school events. Am I correct, Mr. Hall? So if this person is now a high school principal and an athletic administrator, what will be his or her responsibilities for all I mean, can they serve
Right.
in lieu of? Are they going to have a lottery where you get off on Friday every third time and he goes, or, I mean?
So we expect them to be at events within our system at least twice a week. There's nowhere in the contract does Mr. Long have to go to basketball games or football games. If he didn't
Well,
do that
some
for
plays, so.
for 3 years, or plays, or everything else. But it's part of that role, and it's what's expected. And I'll give you an example of what we would have used it for last week. We had the bowling tournament is a 2-day tournament, which I guess we should have said.
Which we won.
It's a 2-day tournament. After the first day, Sparkman was the number 3 seed in girls, and Buckhorn was the number 3 seed in boys. So in the finals, the next day, we knew that we had a chance one of those two teams was going to win the state championship or finish second. But we weren't able to send a representative down there to be that district person. You'll notice with basketball regionals coming up, the area tournaments are coming up, which that will be played on home sites. But then we'll have Miss Stowe does a great job of always going to Jacksonville to support her teams there, but we also have teams playing in Hansville.
They got to get there first.
There you go. You're right. But, so it will help us represent the district and support those schools. And there's times where it's needed there. In a system the size as we are, internally, from the instruction department to the chief of staff or me, handle athletic issues and are almost kind of overwhelmed by it, and you have to kind of stop what you're doing to deal with that. So it would really be that system athletics administrator is what we'd have. We didn't want to call it a director, because honestly, we didn't want it to be a case where down the road they could claim, well, we have a director's salary schedule, and we didn't want this to be a director's, we didn't want it to be a director line and have a situation, because sometimes you guys struggle with tenure in those really high-paying positions, or those positions above the principal line or a lifetime contract. So this would be a contract, on a contract basis. So it would allow for a continual review of that.
Do you see them as the single point of contact for all things athletics, coordinating with the high school athletic association and such? Do you see that person?
So each of our schools have an athletic director.
Right.
Our middle schools and our high schools. Mr. Solly has pretty much kind of handled the middle school athletic director things, and Dr. Minsky's kind of handled the high school athletic director thing. But like in our last athletic director, we're looking at redoing the athletics policy, but in the last meeting we were kind of negotiating between two different athletic directors from two different schools about the start times of area softball tournaments. And last year, it was kind of a mess because there was kind of some rain, and then they had a start time that was kind of early and during an AP exam, and I ended up kind of jumping into the middle of it, and I really, it was a situation. If we had an athletic director as a system that's kind of overseeing all that and is present, we could have made that situation a lot more workable, and wouldn't have to come up and do damage control, that kind of thing. So it would be a coordination effort of our athletic directors internally, because we're doing things like county tournaments. That's one of the things that, as we've done trainings, we want our schools playing each other, and it's kind of helping those schedules work internally. But then also there's the High School Athletic Association, where the guidelines change every single year, and they now have even launched an investigation kind of wing there, where they'll come in and pop in, and you better be compliant when they show up. So we can help with those. And also there's a lot of contracts and supplements that are locally funded that come in all the time, and really kind of the oversight and management of that and making sure everything is square with all of those. We kind of see that piece too.
So is this a new position, or are we taking a position and calling it something different?
Yeah, we're basically taking the position, which was the administrator, which you could gain tenure in, and we're just making it a principal position, which you could not gain tenure in. What we are adding is kind of an administrative position at the
Virtual school.
at the virtual school, at the virtual academy. But I think we're going to we're reevaluating the staff, and in the end of the day on this, it's going to be a revenue neutral position, because we're not going to be adding a person with that. The one thing with our virtual school, it has grown. We're serving over 100 students right now today with that, and we'll be serving over 150 to 200 next year.
Do we feel like that we're being fair to the person who will be over the virtual school, since it is growing? So they're still like at an assistant principal's level, right?
They are. If that's something the board is
As it continues
Curious
to
to visit?
grow, I think we have to take a look at that.
Well, and what other systems have done in the area is they've made that a standalone school. You've got to have 250 students to determine that. So we figured we would kind of cross that bridge when we got there to figure out if you're going to make it a standalone school. There's some advantages of having a standalone school. You earn yourself a principal, so then that would make the state funded. You would earn a half of a counselor. So you could earn some other things, but right now, the students that come to schools get the student credits for that, so they kind of get extra bump in their teaching units. If you have a standalone school, that wouldn't happen. So we would, we've kind of got an overall look at the plus and minuses. I think within 250 to 350, I would say still leave it as it's an academy, not a school that you enroll in, because the kids go back and graduate from their home school. If it's a standalone school, they graduate from that virtual academy, and we'd probably call it something different.
Plus, they play athletics at their home school, right?
Well,
Some of them.
the Athletic Association is currently figuring that out and developing policies to how to count those students back to where they were. Right now, they're enrolled, the Athletic Association, for them, it's just they're enrolled in whatever zone they reside in. So it's not complicated. HSA likes the way we're doing it now. It's very clear for them. Obviously, if you have a standalone school, the enrollments at our current schools are going to decrease. But they get their counselors based on their enrollment, those things. So if you did count as its own school, you could potentially take away that. But on the other side, half of the students in that virtual academy, they're not coming from our home schools. They're homeschooled or private schools, coming back and choosing. They have that choice of that style that works for their kids.
So when we actually approve this person, will their contract state their responsibilities as an athletic
Yeah.
person?
Because the job is basically saying, that's what you're approving tonight, is the job to be basically a principal contract with system athletic administrator responsibilities.
I know, but at some point, are you going to delineate what those responsibilities are?
Like the narrowed down thing of what we had, like
I mean,
of what I
so
mentioned
we've
about
seen-
go to this and this and this.
Yeah,
to
we've
cover-
seen it before when we were going to hire somebody just to do that, I think, on a contract basis. But is it going to be, like, are they going to know and we're going to know what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, they will know, because Dr. Minsky and I will tell them, this is the expectation of what we're going to do in here. We're not going to a line item, like a detailed job description of every single thing we want to do. That may change, or the next person may want to come and do something different. So we're not going to, and we don't do that for principals. In their contracts, it does not say you're going to supervise 3 extracurricular activities per. But when it's a system level administrator, they're going to be working really closely with Dr. Minsky and myself with that. So.
And you don't think you're comfortable with the amount of work? Because I know Dr. Minsky is, as the acting or as the athletic director for the system now, it spends a lot of time doing that. Are you concerned that role is not going to inhibit or take away from his or her ability to manage and administer and oversee the PACE Academy?
No, I don't.
In fact, you're envisioning it to grow, the PACE Academy.
I think
The
that-
virtual academy.
PACE Academy.
We
PACE
hope PACE
Academy, not the
Academy
virtual
does not
academy.
grow.
Hope the PACE Academy does.
Well, it would kind of take on another function.
The PACE
Well,
Academy.
the PACE Academy right now is just for discipline
Yeah.
school. We always kind of look at different things. The PACE Academy has used their teachers to support the virtual academy. And so we're always kind of looking at, can we maximize what we're doing there? And so that's one of the things that we'll continue to kind of look at is how, they can support everything that we're doing.
Do we ever consider, I think at the present time, the PACE Academy is just like, it's 7 through 12. Our elementary people are struggling with some of their issues, and I know we can't have a behavioral specialist in every school, but, have we ever thought about doing something to give them a little relief?
And we can serve kids. There's nothing that says just 7 through 12. And there's been cases where we've had fifth graders in there. It's a long-term thing that's
Well, it's
probably not great.
Not a
but
great thing.
One of the biggest things that we're seeing is that our elementary principals tell us is dealing with the mental health issues of kids coming in to play. And that could probably be another presentation in of itself. I actually met with the CEO of Wellstone that does the Nova Counseling. And I'll just kind of go ahead and talk about it here since you brought it up.
Sorry.
We want to have a Nova counselor. We want to have a counselor, not our counselor, is that the right way to put it? A mental health therapist in every school. The problem that they have is they need the startup funds. So they usually have to get a grant to get in the school. Now, once they're in the school and they start serving students, the Medicaid covers their expenses once they're in. So they're in 16 of our schools right now. They have 16 full-time mental health therapists right now. They're fine with putting one in every school. They just need the first-year startup funds to do that. And so
What else started?
I haven't had a conversation with my CFO about it, and she's scowling with me. So I'm not going to say how we're going to get that, but they look for grants to do that. And it would just be one-year startup funds, and they could get in, and then they could fund themselves with it. So with that, we have had some schools kind of experiment, and this year we allowed school to use one of their teaching units because they went down in enrollment but up in teaching units. There's kind of a quirky way because you're counting from the previous year. So anyway, they used one of their teaching units as it wasn't a behavior specialist, but they used a teaching unit to kind of help with those kids and do pullouts with that, and that was successful. And working with Ms. Stump in our special ed department, that's one of the things that may be something where schools were always looking for a coach, using one of their teaching units for a coach, and it may be maybe we use one of those units for behavior support. And we talk about that with staffing that's coming up here in a couple months with principals. But that is one of the ways that we're in Wellstone, and talking with the CEO the other day, they will train our teachers. They have like a first aid mental health camp, a training thing, and they'll get a certification. So if we do that, we can send those teachers to at least have kind of the first aid mental health camp. And so we're kind of seeing that is kind of the emerging need that we have.
I would hope that the legislature sees that is one of the biggest needs in education right now, is that we can address the mental health issues with these small children. It's major. I mean, a lot of the things that we see, I think, are not real behavioral problems. They're just, things that need a professional help, and schools are not equipped to do that right now.
And it's not necessarily a special education issue. So it's not, those aren't always the same thing.
No, they're not.
And so we were hoping, honestly, with, Representative Patterson, when his landmark legislation before he passed was that autism bill. And he and I kind of talking through that when he was trying to get it passed, he talked about how this is going to help schools. It's going to give us resources to help those students and to adapt and get us more people. And I when I talked with the CEO of Wellstone, it hasn't filtered down to that point yet. And so that's one of the things he's going to try to kind of see if they can kind of tap into that. Right now they do the Medicaid thing and go that route. So I'm hoping that is going to be a residual effect of that, because that's supposed to be the point. And that's what Representative Powers told me. We're going to get people in your schools, Matt, to help these kids be more successful in those classroom settings with that. But absolutely, that is the biggest thing in K-6 is supporting those students.
It's needed.
Is there any more discussion or question regarding the recommendation to approve a principal's position at PACE with system athletic administrator responsibilities?
We've been on a rabbit trail, so no.
Yeah, we got a little sideways, but hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I'll add, because Ms. Stovall sent me a note, that they're in 19 of our schools. We have 19 of the therapists there, so we've increased. Ms. Stovall, she must be watching online, because she's not.
She is.
It's like, what else?
I tried to watch online when I was not here, but they wouldn't allow me access.
On YouTube?
Yep. Had to wait till it was over.
You're flagged.
Afraid I'd call
Did you get a
in.
notice that said, you're supposed to be there?
No.
All right, so we have a transfer request, but we're going to need to.
Go to executive
Do I need to make the recommendation now publicly before we move into executive session to discuss this?
You have 2 student issues and expulsion and the transfer request. You can do those in the same executive session if you so choose. You could
Do I need to
one-
make the recommendation first and then go to
Usually
executive
make it
session?
when we come
Or-
out.
Yeah, that's
We
what
usually
I'm
make
Okay.
it as we come out.
Okay,
We come out and take your recommendation and then vote on it.
okay.
So, at this point, we would entertain a motion to move to executive session to discuss both transfer request and expulsion because they deal with student privacy, and also proceed after that to do pending litigation.
Yeah, I do have a certification for a pending litigation to give you.
But
some
we'll
of that.
come back.
We will,
after this, too.
we would come back to vote on the transfer request as well as the expulsion, and then move back into executive session to discuss pending litigation, and then at that point, we would come back and only vote to adjourn. There would be no other motions to carry.
Do you want to go around the horn before voting on that, before we go?
Yes.
Because I forgot to add something too.
Well, that's not me. Does anybody have anything they'd like to
Well,
tell about their?
I just want to thank Mr. Romine and his, you going to do the
I
same
was
thing?
just about- go ahead,
Okay.
go ahead.
Well, we can share it. I'll hand it off to you. But I want to thank Mr. Romine, his staff, and the students for an excellent opportunity to see what it is that you do each and every day for the students of this county and for those that are choosing a path forward that may not take them to college or universities. And I want to thank you very much. And the food was very good, by the
It
way.
was great.
Yes, thank you guys so much. Tech, to me, I'm a product of tech, not this tech center, but my whole, what I do is tech related. So I have I have a heart for tech. So thank you guys for what you do. And I like to see all our kids have an opportunity to go through our tech program and learn those skills so they could take that to a workforce development standpoint. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Well, tonight is senior night at Buckhorn during the basketball game, and at halftime, they will recognize the fact that Miss Whitney Bogus took our boys' bowling team, our first one, I believe, to #1 in the state. They won the state championship, so I would like to give a shout out to Miss Bogus. If y'all have never met her, she is quite the firecracker, and I'm not surprised at all that we managed to pull off #1 right away.
Also, Ms. Stowe, at New Hope Elementary, they announced this afternoon, I wasn't able to make it down for the press event, but we had some really good news coverage down there where the school was awarded a grant for the Space and Rocket Center to send, how many kids to space camp?
62 fifth graders.
62.
Holy
Every fifth grader at
Wow.
New Hope is going to get to go to space camp
Wow.
this summer.
That's awesome.
Is that right? So it's valued at,
$30,590 some dollars.
yeah.
That's
Great.
excellent. What an
72 cents.
outstanding experience. Cool.
So it's pretty awesome. So that will be, we got to get a big announcement on there for that.
Mr. Long, would you like to talk about Hazel Green cyber team?
Yeah, we had one of our teams qualify for the state Cyber Patriot program. So we were close last year and got a group, so it's a big honor in the state. So we're we're really excited about that program.
That's
We
awesome.
found out today.
Deal, congrats.
Great.
And at Legacy, is it, I don't know, he told us, is that public? Can we,
I don't know, I have the email pulled up, but I wasn't sure if it was.
I don't know, has he told
I
his
think
staff
he said
yet?
it was announced.
You think so?
Well, there's an announcement coming anyway.
Do you want to announce it? You can break it, you can go ahead.
Well, Legacy has a Green Ribbon School Award that they'll be announcing it. And it, and I'm not versed in all of it, but a lot of it has to do with their outdoor classroom, I believe, and how they've integrated the student learning into that.
So there'll be a-
it's a
They'll be awarded from the state and get to go to Washington DC and all that kind of
That's awesome.
good stuff with it. So sorry, Mr. Traywick, if that was a spoiler. On that. I talked you into it. So there you go.
You did good.
It's a good thing. That's good. And I went to the engineering expo at Monrovia Elementary, and that was a lot of good stuff going on there too. And the robotics club from Sportman participated, and so it was a good day and a lot of learning going on.
Very good. All right. I think we covered it pretty good.
Think you did.
All right, at this point, we'll take a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
See the way. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Dr. Minsky, we need to ask you a question before you get too far.
Exit the building.
Before you. Okay.
Alrighty.
Where are we going?